All right, St. Louis. I decided to come on twice on today, and the reason I'm coming on St. Louis because I honestly believe it's time to turn up the temperature. We have to literally seek to figure out why we have not yet reached an understanding as to what is actually going on, as it relates to the universe, as it relates to the development of our minds, as it relates to crime, as it relates to even traveling out into space. We must be able to process the information and data that's formed all around us. But in order for the data to form, we must first encode the data in order to see form. In other words, our mind is literally encoding the information all around us that literally displays physical form, matter as we call it. Many cosmologists, astrophysicists believe that the universe was formed 13.8 billion years ago. So in other words, the most distant star, light, will not hit us considering we're only 4.5 billion years old as a living organism. We only have a life expectancy of right now, it's roughly 70 to 80 years or somewhere around in there. We'll give it 100 years. However, that's no comparison. There's no comparison as it relates to the beginning of the universe, which they say is 13.8 billion years. But what I'm believing, St. Louis, and I'm seeking to find, like I said, the grandbabies, we cannot allow our babies to go through what we're going through or what we went through and what we're currently going through if we can help it. And I believe we can make a difference. However, I think knowledge is the key. But in order to gain the knowledge, you have to have a strong, unwavering mind that's willing to fight to know itself. And as a result of fighting to know itself, we would subsequently reach light years into the future, surpassing 13.8 billion years, I believe, and becoming what they said happened, which was the Big Bang. Many of you might not be interested in physics or cosmology, and that's okay. I became interested in that. Not that I wanted to be interested in it, it's just that the mind subsequently seeks after what it needs to seek after in order to understand itself. In other words, what we have to do, we have to reach the strongest mind so we can literally understand everything around us. As you grow in mind, you're only going to be able to encode the information around you based upon the strength of your mind. So if we can finish complete growth, we would know everything there is to know about the universe and everything there is to know as to how the mind works, because the mind has to be perfected. I believe that the perfected mind is God, meaning the perfect sound. If a mind is perfected without any blemishes, without any distortions, that mind is going to be able to see face to face. That mind is going to be able to tell you what you're incapable of knowing without having a developed mind. We are the observers of that mind. We are literally the narrators of that mind becoming. In other words, once that mind reaches perfection, the mind subsequently ends up allowing you to see and observe based upon its level of perfection. And as a result of you observing based upon its level of perfection, you're going to be able to narrate what you see. Think about it. Unfortunately, we stayed in matter, meaning we hadn't reached a level of development to know that there's something beyond matter, such as antimatter, which will annihilate matter. So as a result, we believe that the universe is out there. I believe, and I'm beginning to believe this, the universe itself is in our mind, and we're just narrators of the mind based upon the level of power in which it has obtained. Unfortunately, we have created things that are not allowing us to see deeper because the mind can only create at the depthness of its strength. So in other words, the mind, if it's unevolved, it's not going to know that it doesn't know anything beyond what it knows, because it only knows what it sees. It's still, you are the observer. But once it begins to get a glimpse of what's actually occurring, you as an observer will be able to come up with more ways of understanding life because you're now observing based on the strength of the mind. I'm trying to go as slow as I possibly can because if we all begin to get this, and it makes no difference where you're from. You could be from the projects, you could be from the suburbs, you can have a PhD, JD, DD, MD. You can be a dropout. It doesn't make a difference because I'm one to believe that what's actually happening as it relates to degrees and intellectuals or education, it's only allowing you to understand in the system in which you are confined to. Once you break out of the system, you're now observing something greater than you were capable of observing. So as a result, you're going to speak a different language because you're seeing deeper. No different than a computer. Someone came up with the word computer. Someone came up with the word upgrade because they knew depending on the strength of the computer is going to determine its ability to process and give you the calculation faster. So the mind has to finish the course. Once it finishes completely the course, it will be without blemish. And as a result, I believe time will stop once the mind is without blemish. I believe that the Big Bang, in which most cosmologists and physicists believe happened 13.8 billion years ago, did not happen. Now they have a mathematical or somewhat of an understanding that it happened, but they don't know exactly how it happened because they can only see in 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. They can't reverse the laws of thermodynamics. So as a result, they built telescopes to be able to tell them how far away are we from the truth. And they're saying we're roughly 13 point some odd billion years away from the truth. So the telescopes in which they're using to make that measurement can only measure approximately 380,000 miles after the Big Bang occurred, which is talking about a billionth of a second. However, I'm one to believe that's telling us where we must go. The telescope itself is not physical. The reason they're unable to see in warp space and time is because their mind is incapable of observing the truth because it hadn't reached the strength so it can observe. Once it reaches the strength or the power, it will be able to observe what the mind now with the power will allow it to observe. So what we must begin to understand, why is there so much darkness in this world? And the reason I believe is because we're blind. We can't see, nor can we hear. However, I believe we're waking up in this season. And you're saying, well, why should our generation wake up? And everyone else that came before us did not know this truth. No one knew the day nor the hour in which we would reach a level of mind in which we now understood. The Bible speaks of that. But it speaks of when Christ returns. But the question we must ask ourselves, who is Christ? Is Christ an actual person? Many believe that it is. He came in the flesh. Okay, now I want you to understand something that might contradict what you've been taught. You came in the flesh. You are matter. If you subsequently evolve into a manner in which you never knew you were capable of evolving in, you will begin to see with new eyes. And as a result, you will begin to understand that Christ is reflecting an undeveloped mind becoming developed. Flesh is undeveloped. Spirit is developed. So Alpha and Omega, flesh, undeveloped, then developed. The beginning and the end, once you finish the course and begin to, you're not going to know you finished the course until you have the power to make the assessment. Otherwise, you're not going to know. How can you know and you never experienced what you need to experience to be able to say that's truth, what you're now seeing? So based upon your inability to discern the truth, you're going to think what you're hearing is the truth because you don't have the power to go and refute what you're hearing. You're not going to even want to refute it. You're just going to have a bunch of people, bunch of different religions fighting amongst themselves, saying their God is the God and your God is not, because all of them are wrong. We are supposed to reach 13.8 billion years and become the Big Bang, meaning the developed mind. We're all one at the micro, but unfortunately we're operating in a slower rim. So as a result, time has manifested, which is an illusion because of death. So subsequently we begin to hallucinate based upon our inability to strengthen in mind. So the mind is, can you imagine having a computer that has a tremendous amount of power, but it's so discombobulated to where the power is everywhere, and it's got so much. It's like a jet that's crashing and burning because it can't control flying at Mach 5,000. Subsequently, it begins to hallucinate and come up with its own ways of thinking. I believe that's what actually has taken place. So as a result, we had to come up with police officers, hospitals, because we're all dying. Doctors and lawyers and scientists. We have to work on how to deal with viruses and bacteria. We're trying to figure out what's true and what's not true. We're dealing with things such as Lucifer, Satan, all kinds of entities. Or we're dealing with hallucinations. I mean, there's a lot to take in, considering how powerful the human mind is capable of becoming. We created everything there is here that needed to be created. And things that we didn't create, such as trees, etc., plants, which is actually still information and data, which is waiting on us to become what we're capable of becoming. We created cars, trains, planes, etc. Satellites, they're moving 26,000 miles an hour. They leave the Earth atmosphere. We're taking spaceships to the moon, supposedly. But the question is the moon out there, or is it in your mind? Is that plausible? There are 8 planets. The furthest planet is Neptune. Is Neptune really out there? And we can't reach it based upon a spacecraft because it's so far? What happens if our mind reach another level of perfection, and we'll come to the understanding that Neptune is not out there, it's in our mind? At one point they thought the Earth was flat. Subsequently they came and said it was round. At what point are they going to come to the understanding and say they were wrong? I don't believe they're going to say they're wrong until someone reaches a higher level of awareness to get people to understand that we have not completed this course. Once we complete the course, 2% is not going to own all the wealth, because the wealth that they own is not going to be important, because we're not going to use gasoline, pharmaceuticals, cigarettes, and all these other major companies that are creating poison, toxics to kill people. Not literal, but that's what it's doing. It's poison. Cigarettes, poison. Gasoline, poison, because it's not perfected. It has a residual that will subsequently cause you to lose your sound, and as a result, you're only going to live so long because you never reversed the laws of thermodynamics, and you had not the mind to know that you didn't know. You're going to start believing in false doctrine, etc. So I just decided to come on for a moment. My intentions are to work feverishly, unwaveringly, to come to the truth. Like I said, I'm not looking for friends. I'm looking for the truth. I'm looking for my grandchildren, your grandchildren, my children, to be able to grow up in a manner in which they should be able to grow up and have a fruitful life and grow abundantly. That's my desire. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to get to that level of understanding. Many of us are 50 plus. We live decent lives as we would consider to be decent, but what about those that were born still dead? Came through the womb and they weren't breathing. What about those that were shot, etc.? What about those that have been through so much pain? Many of us haven't been through the pain as many people have. So my responsibility is to work, as I said, tirelessly, to come to the truth so we can change the trajectory of hell on earth. And trust me, that we shall. And as I said before, I'm not looking for friends. I'm looking for the truth. And as I said, and I'll say again, I'm not playing the radio. You're either with me or against me, but we're going to find this truth. Our grandbabies, our kids are too damn important to not find it. God bless.